The struggle in today's world is to find the road in which one can walk without, in the meantime, getting lost in the forest of uncertainty. A particular theme that is getting more and more traction in today's world is that of one's struggle to achieve happiness. More and more people are thus diagnosed with depression and anxiety as never before in human history, as if man suddenly realized that there is something fundamentally wrong with society, but also with himself, but couldn't figure out how to fix it. The meaning crisis, as such, is well and truly the condition of modern man. More than ever before, mankind, by losing hold of the divine compass, embarked on a journey that now revolves mostly around satisfying the material being of man. Man simply let himself loose to indulge in his cravings without the watchful gaze of the Creator. As if possessed by a craze, man lost his upright stature and crawled on the earth resembling the beast to whom he was anything but pretentious. But what drives a man to behave in a way unworthy of the image according to which he was created? It is the uprootedness of his existence. Once, as in the time of the medieval period, he was in a fixed position. He knew where he was, the house in which he lived, the people around him, and the job which he inherited from his father. The average man barely left the proximity of his town or village, living within the latter for most of his life. Furthermore, the society in which he lived put its church structure in the center of the city, town, and village. It was from there that everything drew its influence and aspiration. It was the essence, the core, the source of energy which man constantly visited to rejuvenate and replenish his soul. The latter, however, became a thing of the past. Where man finds himself today is a globalized world. While exposed to little during the medieval period, now he is exposed to almost everything, good or bad. The information which one receives daily from television and social media was unheard of only a couple of decades ago. This boom in data caused one to be constantly bombarded with little chance of respite. This novum also brought the ability of one to choose among all the ideas presented, as if one was in a marketplace being able to pick the ripest and shiny fruits. Most affected by all of this was man's soul. Unable to cope with all these ideas, it is no wonder that many became restless and depressed. While in the past God was steeped in society, and even though not everyone was a committed follower of the crucified, nevertheless everyone was able to see the world through the prism of the church. It is today's reality that many abandon the latter and many have adopted prisms through which one sees the world in a rather disenchanted way. The summum bonum became one of the many things to choose from. Ergo, it is no surprise that disenchanted man became disenchanted spiritually. Once one's anchorage was no longer in God, and who no longer had God pulling the rope in front of him, became ill in spirit, as noted by the Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran. As long as God had him in tow, man advanced slowly, so slowly he did not even realize it. Now that he no longer lives in anyone's shadow, he is in a rush and deplores it. He would give anything to regain the old cadence. The results of this were a struggle to survive. The world was seen as an arena where the only thing that could save man was man himself. It was all up to him to initiate the process of self creation, where deification was prompted from within rather than from without. All these self initiated processes barged at the door to enter the place of ultimate catharsis. All of them suggested a way towards enlightenment. It was perhaps one's role to go back to nature and connect with the ancestral spirit that was the solution, or perhaps it was one striving for further education that held the key towards a cure for the restless spirit and the way to happiness. But this would never be resolved by man's attempt to change the order of being, meaning the truth that was already established by God. Many philosophers had tried to invent systems through which they could change this order of being and fashion it according to their image. Some, like the 16th century thinker Thomas More, envisioned a societal utopia where perfect order would be the norm and private property no longer stand as it would be abolished. However, For him, it was the Christian idea of original sin that prevented such a society from coming to fruition. Thomas Hobbes went further and outright announced that man should reject the summum bonum, referring to God, and instead focus on the summum malum, explained by Hobbes as the greatest evil. The latter for Hobbes presented the fear of man at the hands of the other. Thus, it was the fear of the other that would keep a man in order and not the love of being, the love towards the Creator. Such inversions of systems would nevertheless prove fatal, as the gaze towards the heavens would now be lowered towards the earth, and man would become unconscious of the chaos and destruction he is capable of. Such dangerous ideas were well embedded in the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. For him, the death of God presented a remarkable opportunity, namely, now after the corpse of the dead God had disappeared, one was able to look much more clearly towards the horizon of the sea and sail with full exuberance, awaiting the perils and dangers, but also the many opportunities of self knowledge. It was the struggle to sail into uncharted waters and succeed that in a way defined happiness for Nietzsche. But it is here that Christianity differs by quite a margin. For it is Christianity that it reminds us that one's absorption into one's ego's maniacal idea of will to power, nor one's dependence on any human party, can ever bring us the pure cathartic bliss of pure happiness. This was noticed by the prominent psychologist Ernest Becker in remarking on the inadequacy of seeking long, fulfilling happiness in a marriage partner. Becker states the following: we want redemption, nothing less. We want to be rid of our faults, of our feeling of nothingness. We want to be justified, to know that our creation has not been in vain. We turn to the love partner for the experience of the heroic, for perfect validation. We expect them to make us good through love. Needless to say, human partners can't do this. The lover does not dispense cosmic heroism. He cannot give absolution in his own name. The reason is that as a finite being, he too is doomed, and we read that doom in his own fallibilities, in his very deterioration. Redemption can only come from outside the individual, from beyond. It can only come, as Rang saw, when we lay down our individuality, give it up, admit our creatureliness and helplessness. And what better example of one laying one's individuality than the crucified one? Jesus Christ, the fully human, became fully empty in order to show wholeness. The crucified one was taken outside of the city of Jerusalem, and naked and beaten, he was crucified on a hill. His sacrifice was for the world, outside the physical temple on a rocky hill before everyone. One can perhaps agree with Nietzsche and his label of Christian preachers as preachers of death. By this, Nietzsche probably meant that the Christian preachers were bringing about a message which brings doom to the vitality of the human being, of the latter's disposition towards fruition by selfish conquest of life. Weirdly, Nietzsche was right. Man needs to die to his vitality, his fruition. He needs to become ashes in front of the world. His attachments need to be cut off. And then, and only then, can he truly experience true happiness. Happiness is not just a static state of being an end in itself. It is rather something that achieves fullness only when it is attached to the never ending source of the divine. It is happiness for something, and as remarked by C.S. Lewis, it is simply a pure axiom of existence that, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. What we can get from this is that man is bound by a divine anchor, and any other replacement of this anchor will only serve to destabilize one's soul and affect undoubtedly one's happiness. It is the lie of this world that has given us happiness in the form of a shiny package, with our sole responsibility to open the package and enjoy the product. Many Christians have fallen into the trap of this cheap happiness. As remarked earlier, man's future became destabilized once his existence was not fixed anymore as in the medieval period. The modern period thus came to symbolize the epitome of this restlessness, as one is crushed by the endless streams of attractive options, easily luring people not into enlightenment but into dead ends. Accordingly, when man has experienced all and thus fallen into a deep state of anxiety, it is in this state, according to Kierkegaard, when one is completely naked before life, having plunged himself into the limitless, it is here the true faith is born, and thus real happiness.